Hey, how y'all doing? This is your host, Mongo Slade, from the TCC Awards. So we're going to do an awards system, year-end awards. Guys should be pretty surprised about some of the things that I picked. So the blocks are WWE, NXT, AEW, and other. Other includes all promotions outside of WWE and AEW. So it'd be Impact, MLW, NWA, ROH, etc., etc. Everything that I follow. This doesn't include New Japan because fuck New Japan. They put a strike on my channel, but I did give New Japan one award. And let's talk about that one award first. Surprise of the year. So for other, I did Evil wins the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, which came out of fucking nowhere. It really absolutely came out of nowhere. It came completely out of left field. nobody nobody saw him as being a top contender, let alone the champion. And then this is what got me a strike on my channel. So, but I have to give the guys credit. Of all the non WWE or non AEW things that were surprising this year, Evil winning the title was one of the more surprises. And I think the runner up would probably be Tessa Blanchard winning the Impact World title as a woman. Even though you could see it coming a mile away when she became the number one contender. Evil winning the title, absolutely nobody had that on their bingo card. So for AEW's surprise of the year, I picked the debut of Sting. I thought Sting's debut was really well done. He didn't do that much, but he didn't need to. I think he just needed to appear. And that was really good for AEW. You know, like I think all of the other debuts that they had, with the exception of maybe Jake Roberts, and what were kind of expected. Like I think we all knew Matt Hardy was going, that Matt Cardona was going, that Miro was going. Those weren't really surprises. I think that Sting was somebody that we didn't, at least I didn't see Sting going. So for NXT, I picked the surprises of the year to be Pat McAfee, his promo skills and his wrestling skills. I actually thought, like, holy shit, this guy is actually good. Like, he's actually good. I remember being very angry that he kicked Adam Cole in the head and knocked him out, and I was very pleasantly surprised that he did very well. For WWE, I picked that The Fiend was burned alive. Even though it was done in terms of a Inferno match, I did expect The Fiend to lose the Inferno match, but I didn't expect him to be set on fire, like in the middle of the ring, like burned in effigy. I don't think anybody, well, you can't burn in effigy. He burned him. But I didn't see that coming. Didn't see that coming at all. Didn't see that coming at all. So the next category, faction of the year. So for the other category, I picked the Foundation from Ring of Honor. For those of you who don't know, it's Jay Lethal, Jonathan Gresham, Rhett Titus, and Tracy Williams. They will probably be expanding to more people. The Foundation is a faction that basically just formed recently. But, the runner-ups will probably be Contra. Even though I do love Contra, Contra has not done anything this year. Not yet. Because MLW was gone for so long. But the Foundation has really sort of reestablished Ring of Honor and what Ring of Honor is. And they're establishing pure wrestling in Ring of Honor. Now they're planning a takeover already. They've been around for like 2 months. And they're already planning to, they've already come out and shamed Roosh for how he defends the world title. And they're not, despite the fact that they come across as heels, they're not really baby faces or heels. There seem to be, they kind of started out as heelish, but now they seem to be moving a little bit more in the babyface route because they're based on honor and things like that. Honor and following the rules and those types of things. It was not really heel stuff. For AEW, the faction of the year I picked was the Inner Circle. I think that the Inner Circle, especially with the addition of MJF, really had a strong year. Jericho did a really good job with his guys. I haven't been thrilled with, Santana and Ortiz the way they've been booked, but but they had a really strong match with Best Friends, and they, Sammy Guevara had a decent feud with Matt Hardy, which is supposed to elevate him, and I don't believe it did. Jericho, of course, really kind of put forth some effort this year, but Jericho has fallen off a cliff. But I think that the Inner Circle has been the best faction that they've had. The other options, of course, were the Elite, which was falling apart for most of the year, and the Dark Order, which absolutely sucks. R.I.P. John Huber. NXT, obviously the choice would be the Undisputed Era. I don't need to explain that. For WWE, the faction of the year, I picked the Hurt Business. And I think that when the Hurt Business really started to form, they really did a great job of, establishing that the Hurt Business were badasses by having to beat the hell out of Retribution. Like they beat Retribution like a fucking drum for like 3 weeks, probably like a month rather. Really just establishing that the Hurt Business were badasses, But of course they kind of did. It kind of the Apollo Crews stuff was sort of a black eye, so was the Lashley stuff. But the Hurt Business, I believe, have been super cool. The look, the presentation of the group has been fantastic. It's been the faction of the year. So, best promo. Not single promo, but best person on the microphone. That's throughout the year. I refuse to go through and find a single promo that I thought was the best promo. But I think the best promo was in other outside of the WWE has been Nick Aldis from the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis. I've taken to his feuds with his storylines with Mike Bennett, where he talked about Mike Bennett's return. Like those were really good promos. The one when they were building up to the promos for the match with Marty Scurll before that match got canceled due to COVID and everything, those promos were really good too. Like Nick Aldis was really doing it. Like it's probably just the way they were produced, but his promo skills were pretty good. They were pretty top notch, and it's very hard for me to remember any other promos or on the internet. Like I think close to that would probably be Jonathan Gresham from Ring of Honor. His Foundation promos have been very good, and so has Jay Lethal's promos. But I think that Nick Aldis probably should be number one, just based off the stuff he did with Mike Bennett and the stuff he did with Marty Scurll. For AEW, I think easily the answer is Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston slays it on the microphone. Dude is an excellent talker. He has been the best promo for AEW all year. Even better than Jericho. Even better than Moxley. Because there's such a deep realness and thorough reality in the things that Eddie Kingston says. It has been very, very good. For NXT, I picked Pat McAfee. I think he's been the best promo because he seems to be very natural as far as cutting promos. He cuts very old school heel promos, which is what most people want. Call people idiots, talk about how great you are, set the stage. Where's the money? What's the plan? Being very basic, but not sounding robotic and not sounding scripted or anything like that. So that was also very good. I think for WWE, the best promo has been Roman Reigns. Even though he hasn't been around that long, like he spent most of the year gone. But I think since his return, his promos have been very strong. It has been some of the strongest stuff that he's ever done. Probably the strongest material he's ever did. And it's very hard for me to find somebody who's done a better job of sounding natural, coming across being natural, and coming across like he's not playing a character. Like Roman Reigns has been the best promo in WWE since his return. He's been very good. And I think second to probably be Bray Wyatt, probably. So the next thing would be mistake of the year. What was the biggest mistake that a promotion made all year? And I'm just going to be honest, man. MLW, NWA, their biggest mistakes were not running the shows. When they decided that they were going to shut down for the pandemic, I know that, they didn't have the money that WWE and other the promotions did. Impact never shut down either, by the way. Impact was running, I think they shut down probably for 2 weeks or something like that. But then they got right back rolling. But MLW and NWA, when they stopped running shows, they started losing people. Like rosters started leaving. So that was a huge mistake for them. To leave, and because MLW had like 3 or 4 people that wanted to leave. Mance Warner wanted to leave, Davey Boy Smith Jr. wanted to leave, Brian Pillman Jr. wanted to leave, some other people wanted to leave, and Court Bauer had to talk these guys into finishing up their contracts. But and then you had the NWA where you had the women's champion signed to AEW, and then she lost the belt to another women's champion who signed to AEW. And then Ricky Starks left, and Zicky Dice left, and NWA just been crushed by the pandemic. It was a huge mistake for them to not find somebody to partner with outside of UWN. They really should have just partnered with a Ring of Honor. They really should have. I mean, that was the natural partnership anyway. And Ring of Honor was starting. They should have started back up with them. But I think number one, the biggest mistake was Impact. Impact made some huge errors in what they did with their world title this year. This year alone, Impact World Champions included Tessa Blanchard, who was a woman, Eric Young, who was 40, washed up, Eddie Edwards, who is also washed up, and Rich fucking Swann. That's just this year. Those were Impact's world champions. Huge mistakes. If you're trying to give any interest in your product, none of those people are the ones to do it. None of them. For AEW, I picked that their biggest mistake was the Matt Hardy concussion thing. The fact that they lied about it made it even worse. But we can understand that it was an accident. Obviously, the table wasn't in the right place. But the fact that they lied and say, oh, he passed concussion protocols is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. It's a huge mistake for them. It was a black eye. I think that really opened the door for people to say things like what Bruce Mitchell said about whether, maybe they're hiding things in the death of Brody Lee. And it's like, okay. Because they did lie about this concussion. They said Matt Hardy wasn't hurt and that he was fine. He didn't have a concussion, or that, oh, well, maybe he did. And then, oh, well, he's going to go away for a while. Then he never actually went away. It was so much of a mess. For NXT, I believe it was not capitalizing on Drake Maverick. They had a very natural story where Drake Maverick was literally crying because he thought he was going to get fired with all those other people who was getting fired in April. And they saved him. And they basically based the entire Cruiserweight tournament around Drake Maverick's crying. And then they swerved everybody by giving the belt to Santos Escobar, who they pushed into a closet and closed the door. So they didn't capitalize on this great opportunity that they was handed here, that this guy had this natural connection with the audience, this natural connection with the fan base, because they could relate to him. And then they didn't operate. They didn't give him the fucking belt, which is what everybody wanted. Everybody wanted the feel good story of this guy winning this tournament to save his job. And they swerved and gave it to somebody else. It's like, I didn't like that. I think that was a huge mistake. I think the Cruiserweight division, people would have cared a lot more if they just gave the belt to Drake Maverick. Not because Santos Escobar sucks or anything like that. He's fantastic. I love him. But the tournament was built around what was pushing the tournament forward. The emotional core of the tournament was Drake Maverick. And he should have won. Go with the emotional core. You could have gave the belt to Santos Escobar a month later, 2 months later, or whatever. For Raw or WWE, or let's just say WWE in general, the biggest mistake they made of this year, as far as I'm concerned, is rushing Keith Lee's call up. I mean, the Keith Lee, when he came up, it just became an absolute boondoggle. They made him shave. The tights was weird. The music was weird. He had just been on TV just 2 or 3 days prior, and he looked like a completely different person. And then it was just odd. It was just like they could have taken a month to do some vignettes, to get his music together, to let him grow his beard back. Again, they still got rid of his beard. It's a mess, dog. They really fucked up the Keith Lee launch. They really fucked that up. And there's probably some other things on here, but that was the first thing that popped into my head. Is like, that's really the worst thing they did. I'm trying not to go like, oh, they fired a bunch of people. It's like, yeah, they had to. So let's see, cinematic match of the year. Let's get into some matches. Cinematic match of the year. For the other category, I picked EC3 versus Moose, the Control Your Narrative cinematic match. And that match was actually kind of fun. If you haven't seen it, you should probably go see it. The story that laid into the match was fun, with EC3 taunting Moose, saying that Moose is not even a real wrestler, that he's just a carbon copy of all the wrestlers he's ever watched. and that Moose needs to control his own narrative. He's not even in control of his own life and his own career or anything like that. And then they had this almost Fight Club scene in a empty goddamn warehouse. I thought that was pretty fun. I thought that was cool. So AEW Cinematic Match of the Year, I picked the Stadium Stampede, the Inner Circle versus the Elite. I just think that despite the match was silly as shit, I think it was probably the best stuff that they did as far as cinematic is concerned. I forget what the Matt Hardy thing was called. I think the Elite Deletion, I believe it was called. I was weirded out by that because I was still upset that they were continuing that feud with Sammy Guevara, and then I didn't feel like it was interesting. After a while, I felt like it was a little too long, a little too self-indulgent. For NXT, I picked One Final Beat, the Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, even though I think this thing was a little too long as well. But I think, and it was also very silent. It was like a silent movie, except for you could hear them fighting. But I think this was a feeding into their feud, for them to have one final match and it be cinematic. And I thought that was pretty cool. It was cool. And of course, in WWE, I picked the Boneyard match. AJ Styles versus The Undertaker, which is tremendous business. It did tremendous business. So, the next one is the Angle and or Feud of the Year. So, for other, I picked EC3 versus Moose for the similar reason that, I thought that it was a nice psychological game that EC3 was playing with Moose. I enjoyed the various promos of EC3 taunting Moose and leading him astray and trying to drive him crazy. I thought that was pretty fun from Impact. I also kind of caught the tail end of this Matt Taven and Vincent thing, so I thought that was pretty good too. But I would not put it over EC3 and Moose, and they're in the same category because so for AEW, the feud and or angle of the year, I believe number one would probably be Moxley and Kingston. Their feud was fantastic. Not much a fan of the matches, but the feud itself, what it was about, was fantastic stuff. It was near must see. That's how good the promos, especially between the two of them, were. How tense they were, how real they were, they felt like a reality. They were really good. So my secondary would be the invasion of Impact, which I thought was also pretty interesting. It injected a lot of energy into Impact, and it drummed up a lot of fan interest in AEW as well. But that seems to be wearing off a little bit. For NXT, I picked the Pat McAfee Adam Cole feud. I think that feud, it was far more of a surprise than anything, and I do believe that they were able to carry the brand for a long time. It was fun going into the war games and all that type of stuff with these groups. For WWE, I think the obvious choice is Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. Oh, what an amazing story between these two guys. This angle of feud, and now that they feuded first, and now they're back being homeboys. So I really love that angle, and the feud is really fantastic stuff. So, tag team of the year for other, I picked the North for Impact. I think the North has been putting on an amazing amount of an amazing slate of talent. Their work with the Good Brothers, and their work with the Motor City Machine Guns. This stuff has been really good. The North, despite the fact that they're, it took me a while to actually sort of appreciate them, but they have been really good. For AEW, I picked FTR and the Young Bucks. I picked them as 1A and 1B. I think FTR need to be on the list because they're much better than the Young Bucks. But I think the Young Bucks have had a full year as far as, they've been there the whole time, where FTR kind of showed up in the middle of the year. But FTR has been killing it since they've been there. Promos, matches, they've been doing everything better than the Bucks. If they only had a little bit more time, I think they would have been a solid instead of 1A. For NXT, I had a difficult time picking up one team because NXT's tag team division has been the absolute shits. Jesus, has been the shits. I just picked Breezango. I just picked Breezango. But I think that, I think that's a good choice, but I don't know, man. For WWE, I picked Bayley and Sasha Banks. They carried the WWE through most of the summer and the spring. You're talking about, and they broke up in like October, but they carried from April. From April to October, they were essentially carrying the brand, all three brands. They were on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. I think they deserve to be considered the tag team of the year for WWE. So the match of the year, this was very difficult because I have seen so many matches on the other end. I couldn't pick just one match of the year. Now, match meaning different from cinematic match. Match meaning actually in the ring, in a wrestling ring. So I really had a difficult time when it comes to match of the year in the other category, because a lot of the best matches for Impact were women's matches. Jordynne Grace and Deonna Purrazzo, they had some really good matches. Serena Deeb and Thunder Rosa from the UWN Live was really good. It seemed like the women's matches, were great, were really good in the other category. There were also some really good ones in WWE and all that type of stuff too, but Deonna Purrazzo going to Impact, it was, a game changer. She's phenomenal. ROH did some really good stuff with the Pure tournament too, but I just got to go with probably Deonna Purrazzo and Jordynne Grace. I think their Iron Woman match was pretty good. AEW, the match of the year, I picked Kenny Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for obvious reasons. I think this probably was the single best match of the year for them. And, these guys really bust their ass, and I got to give them credit for busting their ass. They was pretty good. For NXT, I picked a tie between Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly from NXT TakeOver and Dragunov versus Walter. Now, if I had to put them in place, I would probably put Dragunov and Walter as 1A and then put Balor and O'Reilly as 1B. And then, of course, O'Reilly and Dunn should be on that list too. But because I'm counting NXT and NXT UK as the same thing, Dragunov and Walter is, tremendous. So that's probably be the match of the year as far as NXT is concerned. For WWE, of course, I picked AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown, which was tremendous beyond words. It was very good. It was very good. And it was just two guys who can go out there and kick ass, man, and they did. It was tremendous stuff. So, female wrestler of the year for each individual, I picked Deonna Purrazzo for Impact. As far as the female wrestler of the year that is not in WWE, I picked Deonna Purrazzo. I think number 2 will probably be Serena Deeb from NWA / AEW. But Deonna Purrazzo, again, she went out there and she's really proven that she's, better than people gave her credit for in the WWE. She's tremendous. Hikaru Shida, I picked her as the female wrestler of the year for AEW. It was pretty obvious why. She's been the champion the whole time. She has not always been the focal point, but she's been a stalwart. She's always been featured. She's at least trying to do interesting things if they give her the opportunity to, which they very rarely give her the opportunity to. So I'm going to go with Shida. Though you can make a decent argument for Britt Baker. Britt Baker, despite the fact she was injured, she has been cutting very good promos, and her character really blossomed this year. So you can make a solid argument for Britt Baker, but I'm going to go with Hikaru Shida personally. In NXT, I got 1A and a 1B. 1A is Aew Surprise. She's been the champion, and she's been tremendous all year. 1B would be Rhea Ripley, because if this was last year, Rhea Ripley would be number 1, period. But because Rhea Ripley had that stumble, that feud with Charlotte where she didn't And then she had that whole stuff. And it's not even that she lost the feud with Charlotte. That would have been fine if there was a backup plan. But then she had that fall from grace, that Robert Stone shit, which absolutely seemed to bury her under snow for 3 months or something like that. So I got to go with Aew Shirai being number one as far as the woman of the year, or the female wrestler of the year for NXT. I think Aew Shirai has just been incredibly consistent. She's actually growing as a performer. She's been a little bit more fun, so I'm going to go with her. WWE female wrestler of the year is a little bit more challenging because there are so many options. I definitely think you have a three-way tie. Asuka, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. But it depends on what order you want to put them in. So for me, I put number one Bayley. Bayley is the female wrestler of the year at WWE. She's been cutting the best promos. She's been cutting better promos than Sasha Banks. She's been a better personality than Sasha Banks for a while. Asuka will probably be number two because Asuka has been sort of the lone star on the Raw roster. You know, they had to have the tag team titles on Sasha Banks and Bayley, so that's so they can be on Raw. You know, there was no one else on Raw, especially when Charlotte left. You know, there was nobody else on Raw for her to work with. So Asuka has been trying to carry that whole division for months by herself. And then Sasha Banks is the superstar. You know, she's the draw. She's the one who, you know, almost drew 1 million viewers. And for, you know, her match with Aew Shirai on Great American Bash, she's been killing it. She's been being the top star, you know, top female. She's been that. But I think that she wouldn't have got there without Bayley launching, you know, Bayley having that momentous run so that she can beat Bayley and then become what she is now. So I'm going to go with Bayley as being the WWE female wrestler of the year. So, male wrestler of the year, for the other category, I'm going to give a two-way tie. One, I'm going to give Nick Aldis because I think Nick Aldis has been doing really good. He's been consistent as far as, you know, even when NWA isn't running, he's keeping the name out there. Yes, other people have actually been wrestling and he hasn't really been wrestling. But he's been trying to carry a brand that everybody thinks is dead. And he's been out doing the actual footwork of being PR for this company. And he's doing more PR for this company than some people who are on national TV do. So I got to give him Wrestler of the Year. But number two, I probably would pick Evil because I think he had a hell of a year. Naito also had a hell of a year. You know, but again, I don't fuck with New Japan. So my beef with New Japan is real deep now. Ring of Honor was locked down for a long time, so I didn't really count them. Same thing with MLW. And Impact, they pretty much shit on all of their men. Their men's division is absolute trash. So for AEW, I think the obvious choice was Jon Moxley. I think Jon Moxley being the top guy for a long time in AEW has been very beneficial to the product. Even though, you know, he's himself has been kind of one note. But I do think that they kind of needed, he's kind of become, and I hate to say this because I know people are going to have this guttural reaction when I say it. He's kind of been their Stone Cold Steve Austin, where I think it'd probably be better to say he's been their Bruce Willis. You know, I think that's probably been the best. He's kind of like a John McClane from Die Hard. I think that's probably the better way to put it. Is that, you know, he's the business guy where they just throw everything at him and he just walks through the smoke and the fire and the debris as everything's blowing up around him. He's just kind of been like the guy that's always been there. And you got to give a guy credit for that. You know, he's been carrying the shit out of this company. Cody has, you know, obviously gotten more TV time than he has. Jericho does too. But, you know, I definitely think that Moxley, being the guy who was carrying the brand literally when it comes to carrying the title, even though he kind of dropped the ball, you know, as far as doing these outside shows during the pandemic and stuff like that. But I think that if you think of AEW's 2020, you should think of Jon Moxley because he did so much. NXT was difficult to pick. It was difficult to pick one. because so many guys had good runs. But I think that the male superstar of the year for NXT is probably Keith Lee. Keith Lee won the North American title and the NXT championship in the same year. So he was double champ, which is that's nothing nobody else has ever done. Nobody's ever done it. So he kind of, even though he was snatched out of NXT as soon as it happened, I do believe that was the best year that you could possibly have in NXT, is to be double champ. So Adam Cole, champion for a really, really long time, but Adam Cole was also pushed into a broom closet for a while where he really didn't do anything. Finn Balor, same thing. He won the title, but it was kind of like Finn Balor took a back seat to everything else because the NXT title is being held by gatekeepers and not by, people who need to build a legacy, but people who already have one and just basically are there to maintain. So, it is what it is. Karrion Kross had a hell of a breakout year, And I didn't put down breakout artist of the year, but if I was to do that, he'd definitely win that. But let's see. Male wrestler of the year for WWE. So this was very difficult because there are 3 very good choices. Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, and Drew McIntyre. All very good choices. Now, Roman Reigns can get bumped too because despite the fact that he's the top draw, he's the top star, he was gone for a long time. So he had an opportunity to go away, learn, the weaknesses and strengths of working in front of no audience. And, unlike the other 2 who were, continued to work and were thrust in front of no audience and had to make it work, they had to adapt. They had to find ways to adapt on the fly sometimes. So I think that 1A and 1B is Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. Now you have to look at how you're going to place them. Drew McIntyre won the title at the main event of WrestleMania. There was no one there. It was very difficult for him. But he found a way to adapt. Randy Orton hit a new stride. Randy Orton's 2020 has been amazing. The feud with Edge, the feud with the Legends has been very, very, very dope. When it comes down to it, Drew McIntyre beat Randy Orton in the feud. But Randy Orton set a motherfucker on fire. and ended 2020 almost setting another motherfucker on fire. So I'm got to go with Randy Orton. Randy Orton is the male wrestler of the year for WWE. So now wrestler of the year in general, male or female, who has done the best stuff out in the business. I think easily the best wrestler outside of WWE has been Deonna Purrazzo. She's been doing an amazing job as the Knockouts champion, working with Su Yung and Rosemary. She's going to be wrestling Taya Valkyrie soon. Have no reason to doubt that's going to bang. She's gotten some good stuff out of Piglet, Jordan Grace. She's been a decent character. I've been enjoying everything that she does, and she's somebody I had no intention of liking before. So I'm giving her really high praise because I think she's been better than most of the men. She's been better than all the men in Impact, that's for sure. But if Ring of Honor had been on, maybe it might have been somebody else, but Deonna Purrazzo definitely deserves to be considered the wrestler of the year for outside promotions. AEW, I picked Jon Moxley for the same reason I said before. I believe that Jon Moxley is sort of the McLean from Die Hard. He's the hero. He's a stalwart hero of AEW. That audience really loves him, and thinks that all of his matches have been as violent and stupid as they were. They loved him. So for NXT, I think that it's been a toss-up between Keith Lee and Rhea Ripley, but I think Rhea Ripley has kind of become the face of NXT. I think that obviously over time probably going to transition that to Shotzi Blackheart, but as it stands right now, I think Rhea Ripley is sort of the top star of NXT because they did take Keith Lee out of the brand. But I think that Keith Lee had a phenomenal year. He won both titles in 1 year. He's been the moment maker. He, the guy who, pounced Adam Cole into the crowd, and then they showed the clips of him rising from the dead to snatch up, Finn Balor and stuff like that. So I think he's had a phenomenal year. The In Your House stuff with Johnny Gargano was fun. So I think that Keith Lee definitely wins Wrestler of the Year in WWE, in NXT. For WWE Wrestler of the Year, it's the same people, There's like 5 options, but realistically, there's only 3. Realistically, you could pick Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, Asuka, or Bayley. And I think that, to be quite honest, it's probably going to either be Randy Orton or Drew McIntyre. And then the only reason I don't pick Roman Reigns for this instance is because he just took so much time off, So, but I think that if you look down at it, it's got to be between, I'm going to say it's got to be between Bayley and Randy Orton. They have been the main protagonists that have been pushing the business forward this year. And I think that they're 1A and 1B. And I think Randy Orton probably gets the nod because Randy Orton is still involved in a high-level feud, while Bayley kind of fell off since she lost her title. She really hasn't been doing anything. She's kind of been waffling for a while. So I think this has been Randy Orton's year. Randy Orton has been killing it in WWE. So that's it. That is the TCC Awards. Thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Feel free to disagree with me in the comment section below. I know some people are going to be like, well, you should have watched New Japan, or you was talking about how great the Pure tournament was, and what about that stuff? And you talked so much about how MLW was cool. What about that stuff? And it's like, all that stuff is cool, but I just try to go off of what was memorable to me. If it didn't make a substantial impact, it made me, like, when I sat down and was like, man, what was some of the best stuff I thought of? And it didn't come to me in order for me to debate it. I was kind of like, nah, I'm not going to worry about it. Because I think that if you want to go back and, go through everything all over again, you'd probably talk yourself into, like, some really weird stuff. But I do think that everything I picked was fair. If you don't believe me, if you don't think so, feel free to question me in the comment section below. And also feel free to leave your own. If you feel like there needs to be somebody got snubbed. I know some people are going to say, well, Roman Reigns should have definitely won. And I don't argue with you, but when you disappear for like 6 months, I don't know how, 4 or 5 months, I don't see how you can lay claim to being Wrestler of the Year. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel if you dare. I'll talk to you guys later.